All right, I see my man in the background, Arnaud Develay. I am eager to have this conversation because I am super curious about what you got to say about this. Arnaud is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. Um, how you doing, man? You doing okay today?
Hello, Jamal. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Good, good. So Putin and Trump are going to speak. Putin and Trump are going to speak. And what's wild about this is right here. It's this quote that caught my interest more than anything else. Because, let's be honest, this is a save his ass move by Trump because Donald Trump was going to have to pass those secondary sanctions. And obviously, he didn't want to do it. It was going to reverberate back on the United States. He knew it was going to reverberate back on the States. He knew Russia wasn't going to care. China and India have already told him to F off. So this would have been something that was going to hurt America. So Trump says he offered something, but they're not telling us what he offered. And this post right here. So this is Yushikov. He says Russia has received a, quote, acceptable offer from the United States on settling the Ukraine conflict. The Kremlin aide, Yushikov, said the following a visit by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. It says, speaking to reporters on Thursday, Yushikov commented on the talks between Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin, noting that, quote, Moscow had received a proposal from the Americans, which it is ready to consider without providing further details. Now, this goes to Moscow saying, look, if we're gonna have negotiations, it's not gonna be in the open. It's gonna be in closed doors. But Trump offered something that Putin said, this is acceptable for us to create a context, to have a conversation and a meeting in person. What did Trump offer? What did Trump offer? What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess the first question is whether this offer has to do with the form of the meeting or the substance of the meeting. Because the last 24 hours or so, we've heard a lot of things about Zelensky being present as a precondition to the meeting. This was swung back and forth in US media. Trump himself was asked about it and said, no, it's not a precondition.
Right.
But obviously, it's kind of like this elephant in the middle of the room. I mean, we know that the Europeans for months now have been saying, how can you consider having talks with Vladimir Putin without the Ukrainians being present? Ukrainians, quote unquote. I mean, who's representing the Ukrainians today? That's the real question. So it could be really about, this kind of setup, rather than the talks, the substance of the talks themselves. That's my answer. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just real quick. But he says Russia has received an acceptable offer from the United States on settling the Ukraine conflict. Because, look, I agree with you, right? When they were asked about this, they said something to the effect of Ushakov. He was given the speech, and I don't know if RT is getting this wrong, but he said this, which goes to your point of, this sounds like format, not ending the war.
Оно, в принципе, определено.
Считанные дни, это значит уже на следующей неделе. Вы же сказали дни, а не недели.
Было предложение стороны американцев, которое нам представляется вполне приемлемым.
А вообще возможное место встречи какое?
Но я пока не могу говорить, хотя...
See, when I hear that, I take your side on this. I don't know if he means we received a proposal from the Americans on a format of the meeting, as opposed to in a way to end the war. RT may be getting it wrong. I don't know which one that is either. But I mean, would Putin meet with Trump if it was just, shits and giggles? Like, meaning, would he really have a conversation with Trump if it wasn't a proposal in the context of either? It just will feel weird if Trump goes just to get a no. I mean,
well,
Trump wouldn't be. No, please.
There are two schools of thoughts, from what I understand. The first one is that one of the ulterior motive behind the Russians saying, yes, we want to, we actually are okay with your request, because let's not forget that the request, and that's an important part, of the conversation here came from the US, came from Witkoff, as you rightly pointed out, in the wake of this a fiasco bearing on the tariffs and the secondary sanctions and all that. We today, the 8th of August, is also the final day of the ultimatum. So then what? I mean, the guy is just like left hanging. I'm talking about Trump. You know, what are you going to do next? So he's sending his good old Ann Witkoff, who went to West Asia first, by the way. I'll get back to this a little bit later because it might have a connection to it. To come to Moscow, met 3 hours with Putin. Immediately after the meeting, obviously the press came out and tried to get an understanding of what had been discussed. Ushakov came out and said, well, we're going to hold back on providing any information, any feedback on the content of the conversation until Witkoff goes back to DC essentially and briefs Trump. After which time Trump says, during, I guess, over, while what Witkoff is over the Atlantic, Trump says, you know, I understand that Witkoff has had extremely very productive talks in Moscow. After which he says, you know, basically that he's trying to say we got the Russian to, you know, to in a way beg for a meeting. You know, he's trying to say the Russians wanted the meeting. So it's like it makes no sense. Why would Witkoff, two things, why would Witkoff go to Moscow and the Russian are portrayed as the one wanting the meeting? And second of all, why would the Russians want a meeting in the first place when everything is going copacetic on the ground? They're not in a position of begging. They're not in a position of suing for peace. The US is. So right there, it makes no sense. Now, it could be that the Russians are trying to say, it's high noon time we met Trump face to face, because obviously all the phone calls we've made the last 4 or 5 months, trying to ingrain into his mind what it is that we want, does not seem to have gone past a certain point. It's just, you know, somehow it doesn't seem to want to accept it or understand it, or maybe people around him are giving him just a short-changed version. They are trying to promote the Kellogg version peace plan, which obviously is a non-starter for the Russian. So we don't really know what's going on in that respect. Only that the Russians will not look down at an opportunity to have him face to face. It's obviously a lot more producive to have someone in person in front of you in terms of interference, as far as interferences are concerned, to try to make him understand where we stand. Because the ceasefire, you know, this old trope of a ceasefire has no bearing as far as the Russians are concerned. There's no point of a ceasefire unless the umpteenthly stated conditions for such a ceasefire to take place are taken into consideration. And Putin, again, recently, while meeting with Lukashenko, reiterated what those points are. So it's no secret. Everybody who remotely follows the conflict understands what the Russians' positions are. It's just that obviously the US is finding a little bit themselves in a situation, at least the Trump administration politically, you know, it's a slow summer. It's a dog day afternoon summer. Congress is in recess. The Epstein file thing is somewhat hanging around. You know, the Ukraine situation is not moving forward. And at the same time, it's not moving forward as far as what his promises were during the campaign, but it's moving forward as far as the Russians' military objectives are concerned, which creates panic in the West. So they've got to find a way to somehow put a hold onto this situation, you know, freeze it some kind of way. The key word is freeze it. Whatever happened, freeze it until we can catch our breath, regroup, and, you know, move forward from that point on. I understand there's about $55 billion that are kind of pushed aside, you know, in reserve, you know, in the bullpen, waiting to be submitted to Congress if the need arises in September when the recess ends. And so all you need as far as Trump is concerned is a good reason to deal with your own base on the Ukraine aspect of things, saying, you know, listen, I've gone there, We tried to negotiate. We sat down, and this happened. And I guess the real question is, what will this be, or this thing be about? How will they justify the talks breaking down? That's my take on the whole thing.
I mean, it could also be a minor change. Like it could be something like, I got them to stop firing long range drones. In which case, Trump could say, okay, well, I don't have to go with the secondary sanctions because Russia has shown good faith, et cetera. Meaning, it may not be something big. It could even be something small, just as a face-saving maneuver. Also, at this point, Trump can't say, well, nobody told me this. His favorite go-to. I didn't hear that. Nobody told me that. I didn't know that. Every press conference, he's talking about something that nobody told him or he didn't know. Well, I would imagine Putin's going to be very clear in, this is what we want. We've said it for the last several years. If you want a ceasefire, we can do that. Meaning, you can't leave that meeting with this idea of, well, we weren't told this. Because I'd imagine Putin's going to tell them everything, including the death numbers that you're going with are ludicrous. Like the notion that we lost 120,000 people at the beginning of the year is nonsense. And that Ukraine only lost 8,000, that is nonsense. Like if that's what you're running with, then you are out of your mind. Like all of that stuff is going to be disabused. I am super curious.
Unless Trump himself knows that all this is garbage, but he's just trying to, he's just not in charge. I mean, the paradigmic approach that I have on this is that he's not in charge. That's the fundamental problem.
Yeah.
He's hostages to very powerful interests who do not want to see an end to the conflict. It's too lucrative for most of them. And I'm not even going into the ideological component of it. So as long as the Ukrainians can be somehow, picked off the street and sent, to the front lines, everybody's getting paid, it's now at the same time, I see what you're saying. There are people around JD Vance, obviously, who want to extirpate, they want to subcontract the war to the Europeans, and so in order to do the pivot to China. I can get this. Same thing with West Asia. You subcontract the situation, the containment of Iran to Israel and some of the Gulf monarchies and associated puppet states. You get the Abrahamic League, and then you get out of there. Get out of there and focus on China, because China is the priority. So to the extent there's a difference in perception, in terms of strategic perception, between that gang, which we call the restrainers, I've learned that recently, the restrainers, and the other group is the prioritizers. And they both prioritize the pivot. And then you got the old and neocon, the Nuland types, who want to stay in Europe. So I don't know if this is really, the analysis is really more about this kind of like rival in fighting between two different factions of the US deep states, as it were, or if it's genuinely something that has to do with acceding to Russia's demands of addressing the long-standing root of the conflict in order to get a new architecture, security architecture, and so on and so forth.
And keep in mind,
but what I'm saying is, we might get somehow a situation. I'll venture out an hypothesis here where Trump brings Zelensky in his luggage. They have a one-on-one meeting. After which, like what happened in Istanbul, right?
Yeah.
One-on-one meeting between the Ukrainians and the Americans. They're setting the playbook, right? They're coordinating their guitars. Then Trump goes in with a talk with Putin, and then we have a debriefing again between Trump and Zelensky. And then Zelensky is briefed as to what was said. Everybody comes out and says, copacetic, we get somehow, the ceasefire conditions are reunited. I don't know around which points this remains to be seen. And next thing you know, Ukraine violates the ceasefire terms, with the blame being put on Putin. That could be also a case scenario.
Well, there's the other thing with Zelensky, where Zelensky came out in a Telegram post, and he said, in a post on Telegram on Thursday, the Ukrainian leader said that he had spoken with German Chancellor Merz. I don't know why. I don't know what Germany has to do with any of this. I mean, it's a captured government at this point. It said he described as a, quote, dignified peace, unquote, that would determine the security conditions for Europe for decades. This is Zelensky saying this, by the way. It says
Yeah.
potential formats for the meeting on a high level of leaders in the near future, including 2 bilateral meetings and 1 trilateral framework. Again, I don't know if Russia is going to accept that. They have no reason to meet with Zelensky. He is illegitimate as a president, but whatever.
That's the
So
point.
yeah. It's his
Legally,
quote.
it has no legs. Yes, exactly. So he can say anything he wants, what the Russian wants to hear.
Right. But the
It's
Russians
legally
not gonna
not
accept it.
legitimate.
Well,
No,
the
and they don't
Russians-
want to put him back in a saddle on a media level, because this is the media president, par excellence, Zelensky. So if you
Yes.
can somehow, put him back, like at the firmament, in a photo session or whatever, some kind of media sequence where he stands next to, and he puts a suit this time on, where he sits next to Trump and Putin. It's like winning the lottery for him. I mean, that can buy him an additional 2 years. He can ward
Yeah, but-
off all the attempt to unseat him.
But I suspect
This
one
is
of the
not what the
Russian-
Russians want to do. No,
Well,
the Russians they understand that
what's
they don't want to give him that.
one of the Russian demands is going to be elections. Like meaning
Yeah.
one of those, the part of that conversation most likely will be elections. He's illegitimate.
Mhm.
I'm not sitting and talking with him. That's not going to happen. I mean, I
Either
could be wrong.
election. No, I don't think you're wrong. It could be that, and the Russians would be amenable to that, and they could go with the head of the chairman or the president of the Rada
Yeah.
as an acceptable interlocutor,
Mhm.
while we wait for the elections to be organized in earnest.
Is there anything?
For the American, it would have to be in earnest.
Yeah, but that's the catch with Trump. There's no way to know if it will be in earnest. I guess, is there anything that Putin would give? Like usually in negotiations, people are taking maximalist positions. Like they want the world. It's like, I want the moon and I want Jupiter and your ex-wife. I want all of that. And then you whittle it down. Say, okay, well, you're not getting my ex-wife. Maybe you can take her, whatever. You're not getting the moon and you're not getting this. But this is what the core of what we want to really fight for. What would be that from the Russian side? Or is Putin, his demands are his demands? All of these troops need to leave these areas, the 4 oblasts or the 4 regions?
Yes,
or the 5 regions?
unilateral withdrawal of Ukrainian armed forces from the administrative, legal, political borders of the 4 oblasts. And then
Right.
he said it himself. Immediately, I pick up the phone, call the general staff, and order a ceasefire all throughout the line, the front line of contact. I don't think he'll settle for less than that.
And no NATO expansion. That's another thing.
This could be discussed afterward. I'm just saying for the ceasefire to take place.
Really?
Yes.
Really? They would break that apart. I mean, because that's a big
Yes.
deal. I mean, because keep in mind, the Europeans are like, well, we're going to put troops in Ukraine.
Yeah, but what's the alternative? When you look at it, I mean, look at the alternative on the ground right now. It's a disaster in the making. I mean, the front could be bursting open at any moment now. Any moment. The Russians are probing not only in the Pokrovsk area, but in the Kherson area.
Right.
They are positioning to basically cross the Dnieper and, grab a chunk of what's left of the Kherson Oblast. So,
Which is why this is taking place, by the way.
yes.
Yeah.
So, and the fundamental, I mean, we know, we heard this Ukrainian Rada member, what she say. She estimates, maybe she's exaggerating, but why would she exaggerate? I mean, and she understands military matters. She's actually versed into those things. She said that we estimate the amount of desertions in the 400,000.
Yeah.
400,000. So even if she's exaggerating, there's no smoke, no fire, or no fire, no smoke. It's substantial. It's a game changer. So, like I say, time is not on the Western, side. Every day that passes by, it's going to make things more complicated. It's not going to be about 4 oblasts, but 6 oblasts. And if you wait some more, in 1 year time, it could be 8 oblasts, because it's an exponential process. Yeah, I mean, more we wait, the quicker it's going to get, the more, blitzkrieg-like we're going to see the Russian army basically being
Down it.
unleashed on what's yes. It took a long time initially, but now we're getting into a new phase where, you know, once all those distribution hubs are secured, cauldroned out, that's it. It's the plains of the Dnieper. Then you get into, you have no time to secure a defensive line that's going to be as reinforced as the Bakhmut and the Avdiivka of the early going of the conflict. They're just on the back hill all the time.
This sounds like an argument that Trump is offering something to end it because he's aware of everything that you just said. Meaning, if he's going,
The problem is we don't know what he's aware of. That's the problem. I'm not assuming anything as far as what Trump knows.
Then
Because
this
Trump is
super
not
coincidental.
he's not someone. Well, I mean, if the idea is to get a freeze of the conflict at all cost, it doesn't really matter what Trump knows or doesn't know. It's what the experts around him know, and they understand that if there's a possibility to salvage the whole Ukraine project, we have to call for a freeze, and we may have to concede something. You know, at this point, I mean, they've done it before, and they've done it in Syria. They've done it with the Minsk, agreement.
Right.
So the freezing is a strategy like any other. Just buy time right now. Politically, get in a position where you can catch your breath afterward on the ground, retool, regroup, and gain time. One of the things that the Russians have said they would not be opposed to from the get-go is American supplying of weapons to Ukraine, or what's left of the regime. So that's a pretty good start, you know, for the Americans, as long as they get the time to make sure those supplies go where they're going. They need to go, and they're used the most appropriate fashion to maximum effect, right? Even that as a proposal, as a proposition on its face is, but you need time. You need time to reorganize, to give a break to the armed forces of Ukraine. I mean, a significant chunk of them have been fighting non-stop for 3 years plus now.
Yeah.
With no rotation. They have no rotation left. They operate, and those are numbers that Vladimir Putin provided about 2 months ago already. 40, I think during the ceremonies of May 9th. He mentioned 47% capacity. They operate at 47% capacity. So they don't even have a rate of replacement. So what you got right now manning the foxholes are people who are exhausted. And I'm not even talking about, you know, the political commissar of the Azov type shooting them if they, you know, show lack of enthusiasm, because that's the reality for many of them on the ground.
Yeah.
No, they need to whatever it takes, just freeze the conflict, freeze it. So we'll see what they come up with.
Arnaud, man, always appreciate your analysis. Honestly, I really do. Arnaud Develay. He is author, political analyst, international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of American Political Consensus. Definitely check it out. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it, man. You be safe, okay?
Thank you, Jamal.
All right. All right. Shout out to